Good afternoon. Today is Friday, the 6th of February, 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. Delighted to have Patrick Henningsen with me in the studio.
Great to be with you, Brian.
Momentous times, Patrick. And we are delighted to also have Basil Valentine, journalist and political analyst, with us as a guest today. My goodness, things are moving. We may have blue skies and sunshine in Plymouth, England, but storm clouds in the Middle East, Patrick, which we'll be coming on to in a couple of moments. But for today's news, really packed. Patrick's going to have a look at that latest with Iran. He's also going to be having a look at the breakdown in Russia-US nuclear treaties. We're going to be digging into Epstein revelations, having a look at that famous Badnock clip where she's challenging a very weak Starmer about what he knew. We're going to be looking at Christopher Steele's comments to do with Epstein and what's revealed in those comments, including us bringing back a little bit of UK column news from 2018. Breakdown in UK security vetting system, which is not being talked about at all, but UK column's going to bring that to the surface. And we're also going to be having a look at the power of Israel as it lobbies through our government and civil service. And finally, Pat, you're going to end on the Filton 6 and what's been happening now with jury trials. Very clear jury trials are under threat.
An incredible result, and we'll talk about that in the second half of the program. But let's just go to the major item here. We'll bring this up on screen. Donald Trump is threatening to wage war against Iran, threatening to attack Iran. We're going to call this Trump's latest war. We hope that that's not the case, but Brian, all the heavy assets are being moved. More military equipment has been moved into the Persian Gulf, into the Middle East. One can only draw the conclusion here that the United States is preparing for an unprovoked unilateral strike on Iran. That's the only conclusion.
No doubt about it, and the sheer scale and size of these assets and the cost, and they're not going to be moved for nothing. So, yeah, I think it's looking very dangerous.
We have another telltale sign here I'm going to go to. This is the virtual embassy of Iran. Obviously, the U.S. doesn't have a diplomatic presence in Tehran, and the security alert was posted yesterday evening. And this is what they're saying right here. Increased measures, road closures, public transportation disruptions. Leave Iran now if you are a U.S. citizen. Have a plan for departing, flight cancellations, disruptions, planes grounded. If you cannot leave, find a secure location within your residence or safe building. Have a supply of food, water, medications, and other essential items. Avoid demonstrations. Keep a low profile. Stay away from your surroundings. I mean, Brian, I don't know what to say at this point. I've never seen this telegraphing of a war without any actual reason for going to war. No clear statement. Yeah. Nothing.
To me, this all fits the pattern of it's a psychological war in the first instance against people living in the West. And of course, the fact that this all gets pumped out on X very often as opposed to coming through proper channels. This is all ramping up the fear so that people's minds can't really cope with what's happening. Is the coming war with Iran, is that the issue, or is it Epstein? This is just going to become a jumble in their heads.
That's a legitimate speculation as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But this could be leverage for negotiations. But the last two rounds of negotiations the United States have featured a sneak attack, either by the U.S. or by the Israelis. So I really wouldn't trust any negotiations. I'm sure the Iranians aren't that naive at this point here, but this is what the influencers on Twitter, this is Mark Levine, who's on Fox News. It's time to attack Iran. If we can't get our military assets fully in place in 5 weeks to attack Iran, a regime with virtually no Navy or Air Force, or a massive and massive internal unrest, then we have a serious problem. After all, we're not talking about China or Russia. I mean, the warmongering, Brian, is completely off the charts. And why this is disturbing, ladies and gentlemen, is because of this. And this is very much related. And we're taking an article from RT. So privilege for UK viewers. We get to show you some a Russian website here, which is banned in the UK. Trump's commenting on the fact that the New START treaty expired yesterday. Did you know about that? The last remaining nuclear non-proliferation arms control treaty between the United States and Russia expired yesterday. Donald Trump did not send through a proposal for an extension after repeated requests by Moscow. But here's what Trump has to say in typical Trump fashion. He dismissed the New START nuclear reduction treaty between Moscow and Washington as a very badly negotiated deal, and calling instead for U.S. nuclear experts to begin work on a completely new agreement. Obviously, Trump says we'll work on that and then we'll give it to the Russians. And if they don't like it, we may threaten them. I don't know. But this is how diplomacy is going on this from this presidency here. And here's what he says here. He's basically saying this was a terrible deal, a badly negotiated deal by the United States that, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. That's not technically true. The United States have allowed this agreement to lapse.
That's absolutely correct. America has not responded to the point the Russians have given up, and it's lapsed.
So, and not only that, he's throwing subsequent U.S. presidents under the bus, including Ronald Reagan and others. So, I mean, it's just
all their efforts.
It's just disrespectful, and I really have lost any hope and, quite frankly, any respect for what this president's worldviews are. If he has any, it's hard to discern what his views are. But this is the concern, folks. All the risk levels are right through the roof at the moment, Brian. We have flashpoints. The United States are threatening Iran. We've got a serious situation in Ukraine. And we also have the situation in Gaza, Israel, as well as Taiwan. We haven't got there yet. But, I mean, now people are talking about tactical nukes. They're talking about strategic nukes as if you can win that type of a war.
Absolutely. But as the pressure rises, regimes, governments become ever more unpredictable what they're going to do when they're under real stress. It's a very dangerous time being provoked. And
from the U.S. point of view, it's kind of about this. We are literally sending our military to war for our ally, the state of Israel. Is it worth it? Is World War III worth it? I don't know. I don't think so. I think many would agree with me. And Donald Trump's poll numbers, Brian, are just cratering right now. Yeah. And maybe he thinks that this is going to improve his pole position. I don't think he cares, Patrick, but we'll save that for some discussion. Right. UK Column Extra. Yes. So this is the big story. This, Brian, of course, is just saturating the headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. The Epstein email dump here. And I just want to quickly, I want to get Basil's comment and yours as well, Brian, here. But there's been some revelations here. Obviously, these high-profile people that denied having any relationship with Epstein or, going to the island. Well, Elon Musk was begging to go to the island here. What days are the wildest parties, Jeff? He says in this email. And he's talking about Trump having parties at Mar-a-Lago called calendar girl parties where Jeffrey Epstein would bring children and Trump would auction them off. Now, this has been corroborated by different people, okay, that these types of parties exist. That's just one example. That's in Politico. And then there's this one here. This is a series which was done by Freddie Ponton. It's at 21st Century Wire. Bill Gates and Epstein. Epstein was right in the middle of the pandemic, Brian. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. Vaccine slush funds with Bill Gates. Walking in and out of Parliament here in the UK. So completely thick like thieves, these people here. And here we go. Tom Barak. This is Trump's main foreign policy piece in the Middle East. 544 mentions. He was one of Epstein's fixers. He's a billionaire financier. He's running foreign policy in Israel and Lebanon for Trump with Ehud Barak in the frame as well. And of course, Howard Lutnick. This is Trump's, quote, handler in the White House, the Commerce Secretary, former head of Cantor Fitzgerald Bank here. He denied knowing Epstein, Brian, but the emails say something different. Yeah. Family holiday on St. James Island with the wife and the kids. I can't imagine a wholesome family retreat that could top that. In the Caribbean, but there we are.
That's the one where he's apologised, and there'll be so many of them, I think.
Well, I don't know. It's
the family and all the kids.
The connections are unbelievable, including Sarah Ferguson, former Duchess of York, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a whole host of socialites here. So we've done deep dives and great work here by this journalist, Freddie Ponton, on these stories. So go to 21st Century Wire. The links are in the show notes. Those are all deep dives into the Epstein emails here. But over to the UK, Brian, and I'll tee this off for you. This is what the European and the UK media were running with this week. Nothing about Israel. It's all about Russia. Epstein might have been working for the KGB, and this was all a Russian ruse, according to Andrew Marr at LBC. And the Telegraph, of course, were running hard on this, and Welt in Germany as well. But
Nigel Farage included.
No mention of Israel in any of these reports.
Israel's just completely good. Perhaps we get Basil just to comment on this. Basil, what's your take on the emerging stories over Epstein at the moment?
Good day, gentlemen. Well, the first thing to note is, given that we know that the UK national security state is the prime driver of the enmity towards Russia, then Andrew Marr coming out and with this nonsense about Epstein being a Russian spy simply flags to me that he himself is very likely an asset of the UK national security state, as are the newspapers that have been running with it. That's all that does, really. It's not to be taken seriously or given any credence at all. As for Donald Trump, he's asking everybody to move on. I'm not surprised. Really, the Calendar Girls revelation alone 30, 40 years ago would have been enough to force him to resign. Mandelson's involvement with Epstein was no deeper than Donald Trump's. Their relationship goes all the way back to New York real estate in the late 1980s. Trump recommending Epstein as a great guy. So I'm surprised there isn't more pressure on him in the US. Here in the UK, of course, Mandelson's already gone. And it looks like either Starmer or McSweeney are going to have to follow him out of the door. Labour MPs now rounding on the Prime Minister, saying it's not a question of if, but when he too is forced to resign for catastrophic lapse of judgment.
Thank you, Basil. And we're going to go deeper into that Starmer and Morgan McSweeney scandal with Epstein in just a few moments, Brian. But over to the UK on this story.
Yeah, well, let's just a little reminder of Badenoch from the Conservatives challenging Keir Starmer in Parliament a couple of days ago. But let's listen to what she said, and let's listen to Starmer's answer again.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister a very specific question. Did he know that Madelson had continued his friendship with Epstein after the conviction? He says if he knew then what he knows now, but he did know. In January 2024, a journalist from the Financial Times informed the Prime Minister that Madelson had stayed in Epstein's house even after that conviction for child prostitution. So did the Prime Minister conveniently forget this fact, or did he decide it was a risk worth taking?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, as the House would expect, we went through a process. There was a due diligence exercise, and then there was security vetting by the security services. What was not known was the sheer depth and extent of the relationship. He lied about that to everyone for years. And new information was published in September showing the relationship was materially different to what we'd been led to believe. When the new information came to light, I sacked him. But we did go through a due diligence exercise. The points that are being put to me were dealt with within that exercise. in response to the humble address this afternoon, I intend to make sure that all of the material is published. Mr. Speaker, the only exemptions are national security, if it would prejudice national security. My first duty is obviously to keep this country safe. And when we drafted humble addresses, we always put an exemption for national security. But also anything will prejudice international relations. Mr. Speaker, you in the House will appreciate that in the course of discussions country to country, there are very sensitive issues of security, intelligence and trade, which cannot be disclosed without compromising the relationship between the two countries or a third country. Mr. Speaker, so that I can be totally open with the House, I should also disclose that the Metropolitan Police have been in touch with my office this morning to raise issues about anything that would prejudice their investigations. We're in discussion with them about that, and I hope to be able to update the House, but I do think I should make that clear to the House at this point, because those discussions are ongoing.
Well, there we are. Madelson lied. We didn't know. We had a process, but that didn't work. But I'm looking after the national security of the country. And so I'm not going to be able to tell you much because it's all to do with keeping you safe. And I can't tell you much anyway, because we've now got the police involved, presumably the very police force that failed to investigate all of the Epstein documents in the first place from this side of the pond, from the UK. So that was setting the scene. So he didn't know, nobody knew. Let's have a look at what Christopher Steele had to say with LBC News. Now, this man's got a checkered background, but nevertheless, he was there in the job as an MI6 spook. And let's have a look at some of the things he said. My sources in America tell me that the American government, the American intelligence services assessment was that Epstein was recruited as early as the 1970s, when he was a young man, by Russian organized crime figures in New York, and that his information was being used, his operation techniques were being used from that point onward. Nobody knew, but we did know it was going on since the 1970s. And Christopher Steele continued, one of the interesting aspects of this is that if the American security services knew that this was initially a Russian operation, was a continuing Russian operation over the years, why did they let it run so long? I find this mysterious. I think other intelligence services were also involved, Israelis almost certainly. Patrick, oh my goodness, even Christopher Steele has been forced to admit there's an Israeli hand in this whole saga.
A slight turn of phrase there, if you noticed, Brian. When you talk about New York and Russian organized crime, you're talking about Jewish organized crime, Russian Jewish organized crime as well. Christopher Steele conveniently left that very key detail out of there, and it has a massive overlap with Israel and Israeli interests and Israeli organized crime as well. Just saying, Chris, you've left out a little key detail there.
In those quotes, Patrick, to be precise, those are quotes from what he said. He had more to say, but we've taken that, but absolutely take that point. Now, he went on to talk about Kompromat, compromising material. So let's pop this on screen. Hopefully, where is it? There we are. The value of the Kompromat that was being gathered must have been so great that it was attractive to more than just Russian intelligence services. So there he's back on the scheme, that the line that it was the Russians, although he has mentioned Israel in the background. And this is the bit where it now starts to get interesting, because he said, with regard to Kompromat, I think it's quite likely he thinks that the Kompromat is quite likely, although he suspects that some of these files have been destroyed. So we should be asking, who authorized the destruction of files showing Kompromat on top-level Western British politicians and others? What were our special intelligence services, MI5, MI6? What have they been doing since the 1970s? Well, apparently they didn't know. And if we bring Mr. Steele back on screen again and pop this one. He's saying very strongly that he would argue that this goes back to the 1970s. And of course, we'll remind the audience that Keir Starmer told Parliament that nobody really knew. Now, let's put some of this into a deeper context, and we go back to a UK column news from 2018, where Mike Robinson was talking to Alex Thompson, himself formerly of GCHQ, about Christopher Steele and this Christopher Steele saga. Let's have a look at this news clip.
This is the Washington Post, and the hero is hero or hired gun. This is from a couple of days ago. How a British former spy became a flashpoint in the Russia investigation. This is over Russiagate in the United States, and Christopher Steele on screen there. Now, I kept this back for the next time Alex was on, but basically this article is demonstrating links between Christopher Steele and Richard Dearlove, which really I thought Alex was a this is something that I haven't heard in discussion of Russiagate before, that in fact Steele was working with other people, including his former boss at MI6, well, now no longer at MI6 himself, of course. But this seems to imply a much greater British interest in undermining Trump than we were otherwise aware of. And then the question has to be, who did interfere, if anybody, in the 2016 general election in the United States? Was it the Russians, or in fact, was it the British? I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
Well, just to keep it brief, Mike, I would say that the long-term people analysing this in the States, like Lyndon LaRouche and his organisation, have been vindicated here. The Brits are the evil geniuses. The duo who talk as Abel Danger, David Hawkins and Field McConnell, have been vindicated. Their analysis is exactly the same and has now been mainstreamed by Lionel Nation and American intelligence media, reaching hundreds of thousands at a time, if not millions. America's waking up to this. We've been in this game since the 16th century. We, together with the powers that be in Rome at that time, basically planned the creation of America, and we were determined not to let it go over the trifling matter of a revolutionary war. Steele, I can now see his whole command chain involved. The one man immediately above him, I'm not allowed to name because he hasn't been avowed publicly, and not that I've seen anyway. But Steele, boss of boss, was Nigel Inkster, and the boss of that was Sir Richard Dearlove. So in the mid-2000s, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, that entire command chain from C, the code name for the head of MI6, right down to Steele, was involved in touting the idea of the Russian threat and, of course, the Iraqi threat to the Americans. A clique at MI6 took the lead in that. And don't think that it's MI6 institutionally that's to blame, because these were not popular officers within MI6 at the time, I can tell you that. This was a small clique that basically suborned and subverted the constitution of both Britain and America. They've now gone their various ways. Inkster is doing various things like trying to start wars in Russia and North Korea, his old trade, and trying to get into Parliament to do that now. Dearlove is obviously touting himself as an anti-Trump. Steele has gone to ground because there's possibly threats to his life, and he may find himself appearing before a grand jury in the US, or even worse. It doesn't look good, and the Russians have got very little indeed to do with this.
So, sorry, just Alex, just one final point. Just going back to this article for a second, it says that Dearlove said that he advised Steele and Steele's colleague Burrows to work discreetly with a top British government official, unnamed at this point, to pass along information to the FBI. Right. So you know, this seems to be a bit more than people working independently of their organisations, if they're actually involving allegedly top British government officials in this.
Yes, this is coordinated, and the only place it can be coordinated is number 70 Whitehall, the headquarters of the Cabinet Office. That's always been where the deepest actors have been. Again, not the entire Cabinet Office assessment staff. They're a very upright body, certainly were in my time when I was dealing with them on a monthly basis, if not weekly. But that's where the people who control both number 10, so the Prime Minister's department, and the Foreign Office and the MI6 reside. Cabinet Office, and probably someone very senior there, would be the unnamed senior official who would talk to the Department of Justice.
So interesting, Alex's take at the time, not the Russians, but we've got Britain in here. We definitely know we've got Israeli interests. It's a mucky scene.
I'm just guessing, could that person have been Mark Sedwell? I don't know. I'm just a wild guess.
Just a wild guess.
One of many potential candidates.
Indeed.
Of there. But yeah.
Right, okay. So I'm going to follow this up with who else has been blaming Putin despite this sort of analysis at the background. In the background, we've just heard, well, none other than Nigel Farage. And I've taken a little clip that somebody kindly sent into the UK column. So let's have a listen to Nigel's view.
This is a potential breach of the Official Secrets Act. It involves the royal family, it involves senior members of government, and who knows, behind it all, maybe even Epstein could have been working for the Putin regime. I believe that this is bigger than Profumo.
Bigger than Profumo. Well, I think he's right, but of course the Profumo case itself, exceptionally dirty, and innocent people were absolutely destroyed in order to protect the British state from those accusations of good time girls. But let's follow through on the subject of compromising material, which is what Epstein would be doing. He'd be sucking senior politicians, very powerful politicians and others, into a web where they could be filmed, watched, and then blackmailed through compromising material. People who think this can't happen, let's listen, or let's first of all have a look at this gentleman. He was the Tory whip way back in the 70s. This is Tim Fortescue, and he's describing within the Conservative Party how they obtain compromising material, Kompromat, on MPs in order to blackmail and pressurize MPs into following party orders, particularly on voting, but also other matters. Now, this is a BBC clip, so the BBC, in putting this clip out, when it did, was clearly acknowledging the use of blackmail around small boys within Westminster and the Conservative Party. Let's listen to the clip.
Anyone with any sense who was in trouble would come to the whips and tell them the truth and say, no, I'm in a jam, can you help? It might be debt, it might be a scandal involving small boys, or any kind of scandal which a member seemed likely to be mixed up in. They'd come and ask if we could help. And if we could, we did. And we would do everything we can, because we would store up brownie points. That sounds a pretty nasty reason, but it's one of the reasons. Is if we can get a chap out of trouble, then he'll do as we ask forevermore.
So I'll add to that clip that what Tim Fortescue had to say happening inside the Conservative Party, absolutely being done by whips inside the Labour Party, the use of compromising material to blackmail people into other acts, including unlawful acts. It's in our faces, so we shouldn't be surprised that Epstein has been recruited to do this on a truly massive scale.
And Brian, what we're going to do right now is put some meat on the bones of what you have just built for us with those historic examples politically here. Let's go back to the present day now, bring things back to the present, and let's put the Madelson scandal really into the frame here. And I just want to give a shout out. This is absolutely stunning journalism by Jody McIntyre for the Electronic Intifada here. Morgan McSweeney, this is the chief of staff of Keir Starmer, the man running Britain and his ties to Israel. And here's the bottom line, and we'll get into the details of this, which are quite uncomfortable. I'll just warn you in advance. It is impossible to understand the slavish pro-Israel stance adopted by Keir Starmer and this Labour Party in recent years without understanding Morgan McSweeney here. And this is also the thrust of where we're taking this. The mainstream media's focus has been on how he illegally hid donations to Labour Together. This was the big bundling fundraising organization that helped Keir Starmer achieve his leadership victory, Brian, earlier. And while he was director of that organization, the one that was credited with propelling Keir Starmer into leadership of the party. So he is really the architect of Starmer and the new Labour, as some people like to call it here. Yet most journalists have missed altogether, either deliberately or negligently, a key thread that McSweeney's story, the historic relationship with pro-Israeli lobbyists, politicians, and financiers here. And this is all outlined in this book by Paul Holden, which is selling like hotcakes at the moment because of this scandal. It's called Fraud. And this book, Brian, has already led to 2 resignations already, and it could be, but maybe lead to the resignation of the prime minister. We don't know, but the details in here are absolutely stunning. It's gotten quite stark reviews from some top journalists as well, and it'll probably be banned by Amazon in due course here. Yeah. But let's take a look at this here. And so according to the Jerusalem Post, McSweeney was indoctrinated into the radical Zionist ideology while living on a kibbutz as a teenager in occupied Palestine. This would have been in the early 90s, where he became closely acquainted with Hashomer Hatzar, a Zionist settler organization founded in Austria-Hungary in 1913. This is the extreme of the extremists, by the way.
And this is the reframing of people so that they can be placed back in their own countries to do the bidding of a foreign power, in this case, Israel.
Certainly that's what it looks like here. So it really answers a lot of questions as to the sort of unflinching loyalty and so forth here. But take a look at this. Now let's put the characters together. Here is Keir Starmer, Morgan McSweeney, and right now we're looking at, while researching this article, a former Labour volunteer, Simon, contacted the author, Jody McIntyre. Brian, listen closely, and spoke of conditions of anonymity. Simon claimed that McSweeney was deliberately inserted into the party and later became Keir Starmer's handler, presenting compromising material to keep him, quote, in line. Now, isn't that exactly what the Fortescue clip?
It's an amazing coincidence. Amazing coincidence. Yeah. So we have it at whip level. Now we've got it at international level. The two go hand in hand.
It's stunning, but it gets better, believe it or not, if that's even, or gets worse, depending on which you're looking at. Starmer's arguably gone further than any previous Labour leader in pushing an extreme pro-Israeli narrative in the British political sphere, once announcing that he supports, quote, Zionism without qualification. Strong words by a prime minister that's supposed to be more objective when it comes to these ideological matters. Now let's bring Peter Madelson into the frame. Mandy, as he is known during his years with Tony Blair. And let's remind ourselves what the press was saying, Brian, in September of 2025, just a few months ago. And this is what they said. The Independent put the claims that Keir Starmer had pushed through Lord Mandelson's appointment despite not clearing MI6 vetting. A spokesperson said the vetting was done by, as you said, Brian, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Cabinet Office, in the, quote, normal way. So that's not what the Prime Minister said in the House of Commons during that initial clip we showed.
With shaking hands. No, he was in very shaky grounds there because he couldn't tell the real truth. But as we'll see in a minute, the whole of the UK's vetting system effectively collapsed at one point and had to be rebuilt within the Cabinet Office by outside agency help. So this is very, very dangerous attack on national security.
And then where, of course, the pyramid isn't complete with that man at the top right here, who no doubt is micromanaging a lot of what we're seeing, or what we have been seeing for the last 2 decades on this. But McSweeney joined the Labour Party in 97. And in 2001 was set to work on Excalibur. This was a database established by Peter Madelson, who was the architect of New Labour, and a project to remodel the party into its neoliberal image. But look at this. This is where it gets interesting. According to a BBC report, Excalibur rivaled MI5, Britain's domestic spy agency, in the information that it held on anybody and everybody, friend or foe. And Mandelson's headquarters became the, quote, synonymous with spin doctory and control freakery. So that's a spy agency within the party to collect Kompromat, once again, validating what Fortescue said during that BBC reporting, validating what Simon has told Jody McIntyre, a source for this article. Yes. Brian, it's kind of undeniable what we're looking at here.
It's undeniable because there are so many pieces coming together, and the probability of them all being sheer coincidence, it's just off the scale. This is orchestrated, and its subversion is the correct term for it, has operated right the way alongside government controlling people, but also through government itself.
And not just this government, another government, as Christopher Steele alluded to,
yes.
A third party, and the state of Israel may have access to all of this material.
Well, we can see this with Francis Maud's announcement many years ago, where he was calmly saying that Israel and Israel's Security Unit 8200 would be working alongside GCHQ, alongside intelligence services in UK, and alongside universities as well as the political parties. It's all been declared. It's hidden in plain sight. It's simply putting these pieces together now.
So now, bear in mind what we just showed you, ladies and gentlemen. Now put Jeffrey Epstein in the frame next to Peter Madelson, two best friends, two chums, hanging out, go shopping together, spend time at each other's homes and so forth. And we have a very disturbing picture here. And I don't need to tell people what else is going on in that, but I want to bring in Basil Valentine here. Basil, based on what you've just seen, what we've just showed you, and I know you've looked at these reports as well, I want to get your thoughts on all this.
Well, first of all, fascinating that Tim Fortescue talks about Conservative MPs having an issue with little boys as a plurality, as if there may well have been more than one of them, certainly not just a single case. Up to date now, Morgan McSweeney, well, he started in the Labour Party as a receptionist, believe it or not, coming over from Ireland with a very modest degree. So his rise within the party ranks to become the guy effectively running the show has been quite meteoric. One Labour insider described Starmer himself as not driving the train, but just simply being at the front of a DLR, Docklands Light Railway, which is a driverless train. We can see from what you've shown us the cesspit that British political life is currently engulfed by. And unless there's major reform, I mean, whatever happens to Starmer and McSweeney, the structures in place will remain, unfortunately, without some drastic action, some major surgery on the body politic.
Yeah, and Basil, can I add to that? The key thing is that people have to see what's happening for what it really is. This is not cock-up. This is not a failure of the system. This is the orchestrated infiltration and breakdown of our political system on a vast scale. It is increasingly easy to see, and this requires, as you say, it to be cut out. It's got to be identified for what it is, which is subversion. That's the correct terminology. It's resulted in treason, and interesting to see that word's now cropping up, certainly in newer media channels in relation to what we're seeing happening. That subversion and that treason has got to be dealt with very severely if we're going to cut this out and then be in a position to rebuild the body politic that you've just mentioned. That's my personal opinion.
Very, very interestingly, the very first piece of legislation that the Blair government introduced after election in 1997, after 18 years out of power, was to repeal the Treason Act to remove the death penalty. The very first thing they did after 18 years in opposition.
Yeah,
interesting.
Just a coincidence, Basil. Just a coincidence.
So another revelation with the Epstein emails is that we found out how Jeffrey Epstein became a member of the Trilateral Commission. Now, this is interesting. And again, we're going to rewind the clock just a little bit here, and we'll bring this up on screen. And this is what Matt Kennard is saying here. Keir Starmer himself joined the CIA-linked Trilateral Commission while serving as Corbyn's shadow Brexit secretary, if we remember correctly. He did not inform Jeremy Corbyn of his membership to this organization, the Trilateral Commission, of which Jeffrey Epstein was also a member. It's by invitation only. Starmer served alongside two ex-heads of the CIA. Ex-CIA director said in 2019, quote, "We will do our level best to stop Jeremy Corbyn. Jeffrey Epstein was also a member here. And we'll just remind people, there it is, Keir Starmer, a vaunted member of the Trilateral Commission. And the timing of Epstein joining and Starmer joining were around the same time. And one has to also ask the question, Brian, is that the purging of the Labour Party of so many of its members, including its leader, was Starmer not kind of rewarded potentially for his work? This is a billionaire club extraordinaire. To be a member here gives you access to all sorts of financial opportunities. Yeah. So it is the elite of the elite club, headed by David Rockefeller, I believe, at the time.
Yes.
So legitimate questions.
We just say if the Kompromat is for the big stick, that's the blackmail, the dirt on individuals or MPs in order to wield the big stick to get them to do what is required, rewarding with money sometimes, or positions of power and influence, is the other side. That's the carrot, if you like, to get people to do the bidding. Well, let's get deeper into events now and actually have a look at UK's vetting system. And as the BBC correctly identified, two-stage process, and Keir Starmer was intimating due diligence had been carried out. So he said on Madelson, a check carried out by a team at the Cabinet Office on behalf of Downing Street. But the second part of this is deeper and more serious, security vetting. This is the really detailed developed vetting, DV as it's called, when the state goes into the heart of somebody's personal and private information in order to understand whether they are a security risk to the state. Now, having talked about that, security risks to the UK state, let's have a look at a video from UK's vetting system itself. It is a cartoon. Let's watch this.
Vetting establishes a trust between employers and their staff for roles where national security concerns are a consideration. It is a thorough check of your life, which can be lengthy and at times may feel intrusive, but it is a crucial national security process. As part of your role, you may need access to sensitive information, assets, or equipment, and it's vital we do everything we can to keep them secure. To ensure we place sensitive government information in trusted hands, we carry out a series of background checks across many areas of your life. This can take the form of questionnaires, confidential conversations, and character references. For higher levels of clearance, it will also involve a whole life interview that can take between 2 and 5 hours to complete. It's personal, yes, but we invest in our teams to ensure they are culturally aware and sensitive to difficult topics. We understand that nobody's stories are the same and provide you with a safe space to discuss your life. Our teams are not employed to make moral judgments. We want anyone to feel able to apply for a security-related role or clearance, regardless of their background, circumstances, or lifestyle. You'll be asked to provide information on your family, employment history, where you've lived, and any criminal convictions. You may be asked about your financial situation, relationships, and life experiences to help us get a better understanding of you as an individual. Every aspect of the process is objective, professional, and non-judgmental. There are no right or wrong answers, and you can always ask why we need information. It can take some time until a decision is made, but this does not necessarily mean you won't be granted clearance. Every case is individual and has to go through a number of checks, and you can rest assured that all the information we collect from you during the process is held in the strictest confidence. It isn't shared with anyone outside of the vetting community. For more information, search UKSV on gov.uk.
Now, just apologies to UK Column News audience, because I should have said before that video played that I had inserted some flags at some of the things said in there. But let's remember we're dealing with very important national security, protecting the nation, and the UK's vetting office produces a childish cartoon in which they say that it's really about being culturally aware. This is not about security, defending the nation state and every man, woman and child in the country. They're not going to make any moral judgments. We don't want morality to get into it, because if there's no morality, then what Epstein got up to is perfectly acceptable. What's all the fuss about? And the third thing is that the vetting process is going to be non-judgmental. So whatever you do, we're not going to judge you, so you can carry on doing it and help break down the country. Now, you're probably wondering what sort of crazy personal system could introduce such a vetting system in UK as the one you've just seen. Well, if we go to Civil Service World, I found some very interesting articles. Here's a vetting better, how we turned around the UK vetting service. And what this very good article is talking about is the fact that UK's security vetting system was utterly destroyed a few years ago, and it was described as a failing, beleaguered service. And if we have a look at some of the additional comments around other reports, so this is a National Audit Office report which acknowledged a history of under-resourcing and legacy issues of the vetting system, which was formed in 2017 from MOD and FCDO services. And this is where you can see the serious action of vetting people that they are safe to be in positions of power is taken away from the Ministry of Defence and indeed the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, and it's brought into the heart of the civil service and the Cabinet Office. And if we put that one back up on screen, I'll just give you a little bit more here because it says the UK vetting service moved out of MOD into the Cabinet Office Government Security Group in 2020, just as COVID hit. Oh dear, Patrick, it was that nasty COVID bug. It destroyed our ability to actually check people out as to whether they were safe or not.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to label that one over the top. Is this accidental breakdown? No, this is orchestrated breakdown. And if we go on to Civil Service World here, there was another article which I'm not going to go into because we don't have time, but they identified back in January 2023 that vetting service failures were putting national security work at risk. So there's no cock up here. This is a conspiracy to destroy the system, protect the country. And let's put a name in here. Patricia Dreghorn is the chief executive of the vetting unit. A very interesting lady because previously she was working with Ofgem, and her achievements including transforming eServe, embracing digital techniques, efficiency and effectiveness, increasing assurance and risk management. I'm not even going to read the rest because let's put a flag on this one. This is how the whole system has been ripped apart to make it so easy for people like Madelson and others to come through the system. It's breathtaking, Patrick, when you get into this stuff.
Yeah, that should be the discussion right now is the system that produced this situation, but it won't get addressed.
It will in UK Column Extra. So let's be positive on that one. Now, let's just take a few minutes break here. A huge thank you to our audience and UK Column members, as always. And we'd like to say to our wider audience, if you've never been to the UK Column website, go there. It's a 20-year resource of news and articles, fantastic information. And if you click on the famous click here line, you can sign up as a member for monthly subscription, and annual or a lifetime member. And it's people who are helping to pay for UK Column we're a joint team. We can only do this with your financial support. Now, coming up, we've got germ warfare tonight at 7 p.m, World War III and what to do about it. Amazing coincidence with the timing of that one with today's news about Iran, Patrick. And we've also got more of 1,000 words coming up. And on Sunday, it's going to be Andrew Bridgen's turn. Now, we should have a little video clip here, if we can just play it, to get an idea of what it's like to be in the chair as the artist sketches you out, Jake the artist.
I was told that there was no link between lockdowns and suicide rates. They weren't worried about killing Granny. Civil servants and young advisors all just standing there, not masked, not socially distanced, watching it all. They said it was an absolute pantomime. Boris Johnson could not have had COVID. And I've just got this thing, I can't stand anyone doing anything to children. And why are you willing to die on that hill? Because that's the hill you're killing my people on. I know he's sold his soul to the devil, and he is not. He's not what he purports to be.
A lot of truths coming out in that as the painting gets made. So I encourage people to go and have a look at that. But let's come back onto the subject of the Epstein case and Madelson. Now, one of the things that British press have got very excited about, this is The Guardian, is that MPs agree to release Madelson papers to Parliament's Intelligence Committee. This is all in action at the moment, so this isn't the real news. But the real news is when we dig into who's now going to be vetting the Epstein papers themselves. And I'll just remind people that many, many good media sources have been warning about the power of Israeli lobby in UK matters politic. And here we've got an article talking about millions flowing from Israeli lobbies to fund a quarter of UK MPs. Now, people can go and see this report themselves, but these statistics, very important. 180 of 650 MPs in Britain's last parliament received funding from pro-Israeli lobby groups. What sort of groups are we talking about? These are some of the ones listed in the excellent work by Declassified UK, Conservative Friends of Israel, Labour Friends of Israel, Lib Dems Friends of Israel. We've got LNet UK, Australia Israeli Cultural Exchange, National Jewish Assembly, Henry Jackson Society often comes up, Patrick, and Elbit Systems when we're into weapons supplies.
And Israeli, the largest Israeli arms firm is what? Plowing money into UK political campaigns? Quite often small amounts or visits, but it's all influence. And what happens in those visits, does anybody really know what goes on? And then, of course, when you've taken the shekel and you've done the bidding, then all of a sudden favours are asked and you're not quite representing your constituents anymore. And just quickly, bring that list back up on screen. I was surprised to see IPAC is involved in British politics. I thought that was an American Israeli lobby organization. I guess they're busy on this side of the Atlantic.
Shades of grey, Patrick. It's all very smoky. Now, Declassified did some really excellent work on this because they produced a database. I'm just going to let this run on screen. I can't take you through all the names, but you will see this is an overview of some of the penetration of Israel getting at our MPs' influence, possibly changing policies, possibly getting them to do dirty work. We just do not know. We're not suggesting that any of these MPs have done anything wrong. What we are pointing out is that it's very difficult to see what is actually happening through and under this Israeli influence. And as you can see on screen, the list goes on and on. Now, if we jump back to the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, who are now going to be the people who are going to be looking at the Epstein files in the first instance to make sure that there's no matters of national security, we have to ask, will any of them be concerned whether there's any material which puts Israel in a bad light? And one of the things that we have to do is flag up members of this committee that are actually listed on that declassified database that I've just shown you. And as we're popping up on screen, yes, there are some of this committee. So Do they have a problem with conflict of interest or vested interests? We don't know, because it appears that it's simply the UK column asking this pertinent question at the moment.
Well, in
Patrick.
the old days, Brian, wouldn't you recuse yourself from the committee if you were receiving any type of support, financial or whatever? I mean, that would be the normal thing to do in the past, I would imagine.
That's what an upstanding individual would do. But of course, if that upstanding individual is also in the whip's black book, it could be the whip saying, stay in position. If we just end this little segment here, bring on the last three members, and we can do the same thing again, because we can flag up Derek Twigg here as being listed on that declassified database. Now, I'm going to stress here, we're not saying that any of these men and women have done anything wrong. The key point is we simply do not know what the power is of the Israeli lobby to interfere with even the working of the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament. And we're going to say that the UK public is presented with what can only be described as an opaque picture of loyalty and interest. And just to finish this segment off, before coming back to you, Patrick, if you've never been on the UK column website, go onto it and go into the research bar, the little magnifying glass, and search, because this is 20 years of deep research by all of us. And I think most people will be amazed at how much information comes up on particular topics. Over to you, Patrick.
Yeah, that brings back some memories. That photo there, we can the Integrity Initiative in an old abandoned mill. That was quite something. Now, we've reported on the Filton 6 trials that were going on, Brian, and they're so important in terms of legal precedent on this issue. And so I want to give an update on this. It's extraordinary what's happened this week, and we can give an update. It's very positive on a certain level. Palestine Action Filton 6 acquitted just about of all charges. And we're going to bring Basil Valentine in for a moment here. And Craig Murray has broken down the really salient points, as he often does. But he's saying the Filton acquittals demolish Starmer and Cooper lies about Palestine Action. Now, I want to bring Basil Valentine back in. Basil, give us an update on what's happened with this right now regarding the Filton 6. And also Murray's made some pretty powerful points as well. But just bring us up to date on this. It's extraordinary, this result.
Well, the first thing to say, Patrick, is that it's a win not just for the defendants, but for British justice, such as it is, a win for the jury trial system, because I think it's fair to say that had Mr. Justice Johnson been the sole arbiter in this case, there is every chance they would have been found guilty. And the charge on which they were all acquitted, aggravated burglary, is a particularly serious charge. It's not just the stealing or damaging of property. The aggravation aspect relates to intent to harm people, and that they took the weapons they took the sledgehammers into the Elbit factory in order to hit people with them. That was very much an overcharge by the UK government. There was no evidence that that was their intention. All the evidence points to the fact that they were using the sledgehammers simply to damage property. So the fact that they were all cleared on that charge is a big win, certainly in terms of the judicial review. Craig makes the point that this really does drive a coach and horses through any attempt to demonize them as terrorists. Criminal damage and terrorism are not the same thing at all. 5 of the 6 were released. The 6th, Samuel Corner, is still on remand pending a retrial on the charge of grievous bodily harm. This pertains to the spinal injury sustained by a policewoman. Now, it's doubtful whether or not it actually qualifies as grievous bodily harm. The MRI scans and X-rays of her back indicated a possible hairline fracture of the wing of one of the vertebrae. She suffered no damage to the spinal cord, and it's an injury from which we understand she was able to make a full recovery in a couple of months. So He unfortunately is still being held in harsh conditions, and a further application for bail will no doubt be made. The government and the Crown Prosecution Service now are asking for time to decide whether to seek a retrial on the other charges, those of violent disorder and criminal damage. They may decide to drop them. Of course, there are 18 other defendants also awaiting trial, or more likely, I'm afraid to say, they will continue with the prosecutions. But even if they succeed in getting convictions on charges of criminal damage and violent disorder, that falls a long, long way short of the threshold for anything that could be defined as terrorism. So whether or not the three-person panel now undertaking the judicial review of the prescription of Palestine action take these verdicts into account, that remains to be seen, and still a long, long way to go on all this, of course.
Thanks. And Basil, I just wanted to remind us, our audience as well, and get your comment in a moment, but there was an attempt by this judge to strong-arm the jury on this. And we'll bring this up on screen just to remind you, we reported this a couple of weeks ago. This is excellent commentary by Jonathan Cook here. Barrister's powerful speech at Filton trial reminds jury of its right to defy the judge. And this is what happened. At one point in the trial, a jury member sent a note to the judge, Mr. Justice Johnson, asking this very question, quote, if we decide that they, the defendants, genuinely believe that they were performing life-saving action and were morally compelled to destroy weapons they believed were going to be used to kill civilians in what they believed to be an illegal genocide, would that amount to a lawful excuse? This is the question posed by the jury to the judge, and the judge, who repeatedly stifled efforts by the defense to air evidence of Elbit Systems' involvement in the genocide, answered that the jury must not take into account such lawful excuse, quote unquote. In his words, there is no evidence in this case of anything that is capable in law of amounting to a lawful excuse. So that is not something that you need to consider, says the judge to the jury. And the reaction from their barristers, giving what many describe as a historic speech on this issue here. And here is Rajiv Menon. He is a King's counselor defending the Filton Six. Menon makes a rousing defense of the rights of juries to reject judicial interference and of their right to make up their own minds, both on guilt and on factors that might mitigate guilt. And he does so at the very moment when Starmer and his ministers are seeking to eradicate the principle of jury trials. And that includes the Justice Minister, David Lammy, who's
Leveson, of course,
and Justice Leveson's are deeply involved in this, and so this is the details of that speech. But Brian, bottom line, he's invoking 1670 here, William Penn and William Mead,
and this is so. These men were preaching in the street, and you weren't allowed to preach to groups of people in the street, so they were tried. Technically, they broke the law. The jury said, we don't think any crime has been committed, so the jury found them not guilty. The judge then put the jury in prison on bread and water and said, I'm not going to let you out till you make the right decision. But the jury's strong enough to stay in prison. And eventually, when they were brought back into court, they'd made the case powerful enough that the jury's decision of not guilty stood. And this is such a landmark case because it shows the power of the jury to make moral decisions in court. Whatever the law says, they can counter bad law in court. And this is a classic case of a judge trying to bully, direct that jury into finding a verdict which the government clearly wanted. So I believe the barrister is Pakistani origin. What an amazing man, because he has absolutely put the huge common law rock in the pond. And Leveson, of course, in his latest reports, is trying to get rid of juries. Why? Because that gives the sole power to the judge in a court. So this is a major, major decision here that's come out of this court.
Because that issue of jury nullification, Brian, this is one of the foundational blocks of the modern democratic society. And when you take that away, you take away 800 years, really, of hard-fought efforts by subsequent generations.
And Patrick, you leave people with no defence. As many people in the UK column news audience will know, I have fought on behalf of largely mothers, but sometimes it's been fathers that have had their children taken away through the family court system. And of course, what is so heinous in those cases is that mums and dads are in court facing the judge and a whole range of experts ranged against the mums and dads. No jury, no press. This is a star chamber. It's a secret court, and it's clear that the changes and recommendations coming out of Leveson's reports about courts in the future and AI and no juries. This is designed to put power solely in the hands of appointed and elected judges. Very, very dangerous. So this barrister should be getting 1 million emails of thanks from people around the country for his bravery in challenging a judge in court. I think that takes amazing courage in this day and age, Patrick.
Holding the line for English common law.
Correct.
And just for those who are interested in this historically, you can buy this very short book, but very important, I think, thing that you should have on your library shelf in your living room: The Trial of William Penn and William Mead for causing a tumult at the sessions held at the Old Bailey. So again, this is so important in terms of history, Brian, and people don't realize that to remove this, to remove jury trials, which they're attempting to do, this government, this is a huge step backwards for Western civilization. It's a massive step backwards.
It's a step backwards, Patrick, but it's also a sidestep because it takes us from common law, people being innocent until proven guilty by a jury of their peers, to the fact that essentially you're guilty until you can prove your innocence in front of an appointed judge, the European system, or large parts of Europe anyway. So this is really incredible. Should we bring Basil back in? Basil, this is truly amazing, isn't it? And many more people in this country should be delving in, researching this particular case to understand the significance of what's happened here.
Yes, the right of juries to make moral judgments is arguably the single most important bulwark in the unwritten British Constitution against tyranny. That's the thing. If governments appoint judges and judges are then the sole arbiters of justice, then particularly when you have governments as, shall we say, morally bankrupt as the present one, then you are on the path to tyranny. It's worth pointing out that in this case, the defendants were not allowed by the judge to say why they had carried out the action that they did. Think about that. When on the stand, they were forbidden to say, we did this, I did this because X, Y, Z. Absolutely extraordinary. So what would have happened had the jury not been there and had that courageous barrister not made the speech he did? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would have been an illusion of justice.
Indeed.
At that point. Thank you, Basil Valentine. More about this in extra. I'm sure the discussion will spill over there.
Indeed. Well, we've come to a close for today's UK Column News. So, Patrick, thank you very much for joining me. Basil Valentine, thank you. For UK Column members, we will have UK Column Extra in a few moments. For our worldwide audience, huge thanks for joining us today. Spread the word, spread the information we've given. Be kind to your fellow man and woman. And my last comment is we're delighted that UK Column team are indeed back from China. Very long flight in the last 24 hours. And some of the team back in the studio today to help us get this production out. So good news all round. Stay posted. We'll be back for UK Column News, 1 o'clock on Monday, UK Column Extra in a few moments. See you then. Bye-bye.